Why do we do it? I mean, really, why do we risk our money, our reputations, even our lives on things that aren't a sure bet? It seems kind of crazy, right? And yet, we all do it. So we're going to get into it because the answer isn't just about being reckless. It's about how our brains are fundamentally wired to see the world. All right, let me put you in the hot seat for a second. Imagine you're in charge. You've got two options. Program A is the safe bet. You save 200 people, guaranteed. Program B is a gamble. There's a chance you save everybody, but there's a much bigger chance you save no one. So which do you pick? If you're like most people, you probably went with Program A. That certainty, it just feels better. Okay, but hang on. What if I presented the exact same situation just with different words? Now, in Program C, 400 people will definitely die. With Program D, you take the gamble again. A 1 in 3 shot that nobody dies, but a 2 in 3 shot that all 600 do. What's your gut telling you now? All of a sudden, that risky option, Program D, starts to look a whole lot more appealing, doesn't it? And here's the kicker. Program A and Program C, they're the exact same outcome. 200 live, 400 don't. And B and D, identical. The only thing that changed was how we talked about it, focusing on people saved versus people who will die. That simple switch completely flips our appetite for risk. This is the reflection effect, and it tells us something huge. Our choices about risk aren't logical. They're a mirror of how desperately we want to avoid a loss. So this paradox is really our way in. It's the first clue that our decisions aren't based on cold, hard facts. They're based on a mental reality that gets bent and twisted, depending on whether we're thinking about what we can gain or what we stand to lose. The two psychologists who figured this out, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, are absolute legends. They called their idea prospect theory, and at the very heart of it is this concept called loss aversion. Think about it. The pain of losing $100 feels way, way worse than the joy of finding $100 feels good. And it's that feeling, that need to avoid the pain of loss, that drives us to take chances we'd never even consider otherwise. But, of course, we're not all the same, right? We all know that one friend who'll jump out of a plane at a moment's notice, and another who's afraid to try a new restaurant. So what's the difference? Well, let's peel back another layer and look at our own personalities. In psychology, one of the most widely accepted frameworks for personality is called the Big Five. It basically maps our personalities across 5 key areas: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. You know, the stuff that makes you, you. And it turns out these traits are actually pretty great at predicting how you'll handle risk. You can almost think of it like a gas pedal and a brake inside your head. If you score high on extroversion, you're outgoing and love excitement, or openness, you're super curious and up for anything, you're probably hitting the gas on risk. But if you're high in conscientiousness, you're organized and careful, or agreeableness, you're cooperative and thoughtful, those traits tend to act like a brake, slowing you down. But here's where reality just flips the script. You would expect a group of risk takers to be these off-the-charts extroverts, right? The life of the party. Well, a 2024 study dug into this and found the complete opposite. The single most significant personality trait they found was low extroversion. These weren't loud, outgoing people. They were more quiet, more introverted. This just shatters the stereotype. Okay, so if it's not just our personality, what's happening even deeper? To get to the bottom of risk, we've got to look at the source code, the chemistry inside our own brains. And the main character in this story is a molecule I'm sure you've heard of, dopamine. And get ready for another head scratcher. You might think people who take big risks have dopamine systems that are always firing on all cylinders, but researchers found the opposite. They discovered that people with a less active dopamine system at rest were actually more likely to make a risky choice. It's like their brain's reward system is running on low, so it's hungry for a bigger thrill to get that chemical hit. This connects perfectly with what you hear from extreme athletes. It's not just dopamine. When you take a big risk, your body gets flooded with adrenaline. And that rush triggers the release of endorphins, your body's natural feel-good chemicals. It's a seriously powerful cocktail. That incredible feeling of joy after you've made it through something dangerous isn't just relief. It's a very real and very profound biochemical reward. So we've looked at our brain's biases, our personalities, our brain chemistry, but none of us is an island. We're all influenced by the world around us. So let's zoom out and look at how our society itself has created what some people call a culture of risk. You know, our whole understanding of risk has changed so much. At first, we just thought people made risky choices and then came up with stories to justify them later. Then came prospect theory, showing us we're biased from the start. After that, new ideas popped up, like maybe we each have a built-in risk thermostat we try to keep level, or that we have two minds, a fast, impulsive one and a slow, careful one that are always battling it out. And this is the part that matters to every single one of us. In the past, things like tradition or your family often decided your path in life. But now, most of those guide rails are gone. We live in a world of constant uncertainty. Every big choice, changing careers, moving to a new city, investing your money, even swiping right on a dating app, is a risk calculation. Risk isn't just for daredevils anymore. It's the basic language we all use to get through life. So let's bring it all back home. Let's take all these big ideas, the brain chemistry, the personality, the culture, and apply them to that surprising study we talked about. What does a real-life risk taker actually look like when you dig into the data? The answer is probably not what you're picturing. First off, that classic adrenaline junkie stereotype, the constant need for intense sensations. Well, in the study, a huge majority of the participants, 16 out of 21, scored right in the middle. They weren't desperately chasing some crazy high. They were just average. All right, what about when a risk actually makes sense? You know, when it's justified? Same story. The results were overwhelmingly medium again. This wasn't a crew of reckless adventurers who jump at any chance. Their approach was much more moderate, much more balanced. And now for the biggest surprise of all, the single most dominant trait they found in this group. It was caution. I'm not kidding. An incredible 18 out of 21 people in the study were identified as cautious. Let that sink in for a second. The defining feature of this group of risk takers was their tendency to be careful. So what's the big takeaway here? It's that we need to throw out that old image of the reckless, impulsive daredevil. The evidence paints a totally different picture. The modern risk taker is much more likely to be a thoughtful, cautious, and even introverted person who is strategically navigating a very complex and uncertain world. For them, risk isn't a toy, it's a calculated tool. And that leaves us with one final big question for you. Now that you know your brain is hardwired to fear loss, that your personality has its own built-in risk settings, and that the world pretty much demands you take chances, how does that change how you'll look at your next big decision? The science can't give you the answer, but it can give you a much, much clearer map of your own mind.